All right.
And I've got noon straight up. I'm going to wait one more minute.
See. Kim is on. Hello, Kim. There you are.
Hello.
And welcome.
Thank you.
All right. Go ahead.
Tim, can I do a bad thing? Can you maybe, there's a lot of light coming in through that window in back of you.
Yeah, let me go close those.
Thank you. And welcome to the Rotary Club of Ames, February 13th, 2023. We're starting a new holiday today. It's called Valentine's Eve. So for those of us who have yet to get our Valentine something special, closing hours are probably 5. I don't know that they close early on Valentine's Eve. So get the opportunity to make that last minute reservation or purchase for all. As always, I would ask each of you to please stand as we begin our meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. For those that are able, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. And if you'll remain standing just for a moment, I'm going to share 2 items. And I'm really remiss, I did not mention this week or last week, the tragedy and difficulty going on in Turkey and Syria, and I really should have, with that devastating earthquake. They have, I now know, over 20,000 have lost their lives. And Rotary is exceptionally active in helping there. And if you want to contribute, you can go online to Rotary International, and their financial support, I know, would be greatly appreciated. Also of note is a past member passed away this last week, Bob Underhill. So let's take into consideration for a moment the victims and the families impacted in Turkey and Syria, and the help they're hopefully receiving, and also Bob Underhill and his family. So a moment, please. Thank you. Please be seated. And we want to take the opportunity for those that are visiting with us today to give you a special welcome. So, Louis, I think the podium is yours.
Okay, thank you very much. And please, all of you, join in with me on the welcome song. Welcome to you from Ames Rotary, Nevada, London, or Gay Paris, from far off lands or the USA. We're glad that you are here today. Come back again whenever you're near. Join us and then we'll make it clear. Around the world you will always be. Welcome at Rotary.
Thank you, Louis. I do have one service opportunity that came to my attention, and I'll share this with Karen so it can go out in an email, and we'll mention it again next week. Food Pantry wants your egg cartons and grocery bags. SHOP, the student serving Food Pantry on campus, is in need of empty egg cartons, cardboard or styrofoam, and plastic grocery bags. They can be dropped off, and this is for the university, Iowa State University, at 1306 Bayer and then the hours are provided. So I will, again, share this with Karen, and we'll get this out so that if people would like to make those contributions to that area, a nice, easy way for us to be of service to, again, those in need in the food pantry area. And actually, and that's the only announcement I have. I don't know if anybody else has anything else they want to share at this time. Hearing or seeing none. Dr. Adams, I'm going to turn the podium over to you, sir.
Dr. Adams, you must be referring to my wife. She's the doctor. I wonder, Kent, to kind of add to the service opportunity, if that's something where Rotary members could maybe bring empty cartons to our next in-person meeting, and then one of us can just take a kind of a large batch delivery to help fulfill that need. I don't know if that's...
Mason, that's a wonderful idea. So plan on that at our meeting next Monday at the Plex. Bring plastic bags and 8 cartons, and then I'll deliver those to buyer. Thank you, Mason.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before I introduce Kim Norvell, I just wanted to, for housekeeping purposes here, we'll use the chat feature in Zoom. If you would place your questions, certainly do that during the course of the discussion, so that we can jump on those, and at the end, Kim, you can dial up the chat and look through the questions that our members have put in there. Certainly, if there's something somebody really wants to interject or ask a question, we can accommodate that as well. But seems to be the easiest way to do this is to put your questions in the chat or comments, and we'll address them at the end. So without further ado, it is my pleasure to introduce our wonderful speaker today. Kim Norvell is the editor of the Ames Tribune and the editor/coach. Let me move my screen here, a little easier for me to read. Editor-coach of the Des Moines Register's Communities Reporters. She is also director of content for the Des Moines Storytellers Project. As a reporter, Kim covered public safety, city government, and growth and development. As an Omaha, Nebraska native, Kim studied journalism at where else? Iowa State University.
Yeah.
And prior to the Register, she worked at the St. Joseph News Press in St. Joseph, Missouri. Please welcome Kim Norvell.
Hello. Sorry, my cat has jumped in the conversation. So the perils of working from home, you might see her jump up a few times.
We fully accept animals on Zoom calls as well. So totally okay. Animals, kids, whatever, all good.
Well, thank you so much for having me. It's really nice to be here, and thank you for that song. That was incredible. I've never heard that before, so that really was a great kickoff to the meeting. I don't have anything formal to present, so I will just tell you a little bit about myself and the Ames Tribune, and a little bit about kind of, the news industry today. So feel free to please put questions in. I think that will guide the conversation more than anything. I want to hear what our community members want to know about the paper as well. So like Mason said, I am the editor both of the Ames Tribune and of a team in the Des Moines Register. Gannett purchased Gatehouse purchased Gannett, which became a combined organization a couple years ago. And so now Ames and Iowa City and Des Moines are the Iowa newspapers, all owned by Gannett. And so I took over this position in August, and we decided to make it a split between Ames and Des Moines so that we can have more of a focus in Des Moines and in Ames of the Metro and of Ames. So, vice versa. We really thought that because Ames is so close to Des Moines, and because often there's a lot of commuters between the two communities, that there's a lot of overlap in between them. And so we thought if we had someone who was kind of in both areas, that we would be able to highlight Ames a little bit more in the Register and highlight, Des Moines a little bit more in the Tribune. We're also taking that approach statewide with Iowa City. Obviously they're not as close geographically, but there's some overlaps with the universities. Our subscriber readership is interested in, still what's happening in Johnson County. So we take that same approach with Iowa City, just maybe not as close as we do here. The Ames Tribune has 3 reporters. So our reporters have what we call beats, which is their coverage area. Rana Fayborg covers business and the arts. So you'll see her byline on, businesses that are opening and closing, events happening that are of interest to the community, whether that's art shows or concerts, that sort of thing. She'll also do features on businesses. So, for example, we just got word that there's a new business opening in Ziering, which is in Story County, and it's the first business to open there in, several decades. So just interesting pieces of information like that. Teresa Albertson covers Story County and Boone County. So she has kind of a big area there. Obviously primarily Ames is our #1 coverage area, but we also stretch into Nevada and in Boone, both the counties as well. So she keeps an eye on the city governments, the boards of supervisors. She also takes a look at public safety issues, that sort of thing. And then Philip Sitter covers the university and education. So he's there at school board meetings, at schools all across Story County, not just Ames. And he covers the Board of Regents. We also have one photographer, Nirmalendu Majumdar, who is amazing and has been with the Ames Tribune for a long time. I'm sure you guys have seen his credit before. And then we have a sports reporter, Joe Randleman. So he also covers sports in Boone and Story counties. So our biggest goal as the news organization, news has changed quite a bit in the last couple of decades, but our mission remains the same. Our mission is to hold elected officials to account. It's to answer questions for our readers to give themselves more power over their tax dollars and their lives. And it's to be essential to our readers, to give them the context and the information they need to live in a community and be connected to their neighbors. We're doing that a little bit differently these days. Obviously, we have fewer reporters. Ames, used to be stocked full with 20 or more reporters, and now we're down to 3. So we have to make decisions on what we do and we don't cover. Fortunately, we're able to be guided on those decisions through basically metrics that we track online. So we can see what people are reading, what people are interacting with, what people are interested in. And that helps guide our coverage when we're trying to make decisions between, say, 2 story topics that come up on the same day, where we only have, one reporter to chase. So there's a challenge there and an opportunity there. We're able to be a little bit more relevant, say, to readers' lives, because we're able to decide what it is they're most interested in, guiding us in our coverage areas. But it's also a challenge because, we want to be able to cover as many issues as possible. And sometimes, it's just a matter of not having enough bodies and brain power to get it all done. We're also facing down a changing new news landscape. Fewer people are subscribing to the print product, which generally provides us more revenue. And so we have to adapt our coverage to fit readers where they are. A lot of times that's online, and it's also on other platforms than just our website. So we're on Facebook, and we're on Instagram, and we're on Twitter. And a lot of people, surprisingly, instead of going to our website, will just Google the news topic that they're trying to find out about. So Iowa State University Ames or RAGBRAI Ames is what they will Google. And so we have to also consider that in our coverage and putting those keywords into those headlines so that when people search those topics, we are the ones that they're finding on Google as like the top link. So because fewer people are subscribing to print, we're focused a lot on online and trying to meet our readers where they're at. So, we are growing digital subscribers, which is great for us. We are growing as an organization. More people want to read our work, but it simply does not compare in terms of revenue. And so we have those challenges again with hiring more people, with keeping the newsroom staffed. And it's a difficult community conversation to ask people to subscribe to a website that used to be free. The news industry, I think the biggest mistake they ever made several years ago was that they allowed some of their content online for free. No one ever complained that the newspaper wasn't free, but because we offered it online before, it's hard to kind of flip that switch in their mind. But we do feel that we're a valuable service to the community, and people who read the news are just more well-informed, are able to hold their elected officials to account, are better to make or can make better decisions about their lives. And so we really encourage people to start subscribing to the Ames Tribune and paying reporters for their hard work. And also, we're also facing a changing way that people are consuming news. There's no longer just credible news sites available. As I'm sure you guys know, things spread rapidly on Facebook or on other platforms that are not vetted, are not carefully sourced and fact-checked like we do on news. And so some people just feel less inclined to subscribe to a news product because they can find their quote unquote information elsewhere. So those are challenges that we're facing. I don't want to sugarcoat anything. I think news, obviously I'm in this business and I've been in this business for almost 15 years now. And I do it for a reason, because I believe in the mission of keeping community members informed. And our reporters do too. Obviously, they're here because they want to help spread the word about what is happening and what is not in the community. It's just, we do face some challenges and we're adapting to those as we move forward. And then other things that I just wanted to touch base on. In my introduction, Mason mentioned the Des Moines Storytellers Project. Some of our Ames reporters are also contributing to that. The Storytellers Project is a community initiative, if you guys have heard of the Moth on NPR. It's Register and Ames Tribune reporters coach storytellers who are just regular old people. Any one of you could become a storyteller. There are neighbors or friends or coworkers, and they are coached to tell a 10-minute story on stage, live without notes, based on a certain theme. And we do this because we think telling people stories, much like in the news, builds people's empathies, builds empathy, and connects people to community members they may have never met before in their actual lives. So we're trying to expand that out to include more Ames people, which we've had, excited to say we've had several Ames residents on our stage. And so that's actually a very fun, side project that we do. We sell tickets. It's obviously a revenue driver for us, but it's more about building community and building empathy within our communities. So that's just kind of a quick spiel on what I have. Let's see, it looks like some questions are coming in. Rotary has many newsworthy topics. For example, our Heroes of Ames. What is that about?
Park's not answering. We presented, what was it, 8 to 10 people with Heroes of the Community. Back in the day, the Ames Tribune had unsung heroes. And And they recognize those that may have been overlooked for their contributions, whether it be volunteering in various places and commitment to their service. So we took that over and sort of did that this year, and we hope to continue that as well.
Okay.
So the
Cool.
question is how is it best to communicate that and get a reporter or get somebody there to cover it through the Tribune?
Yeah. So the best way is to send, if it's like an event, I'm not sure, to send the information to our news@amestrib.com website. And that comes to, I mean, I look at it most, but it comes to the whole newsroom. And then if that's something that a reporter is available to cover, they would be, sent to cover it. But it might be something where, if we aren't available that day, then we would retroactively cover it the next day. And so, that might be where you would send like a press release with the information of who won and maybe some information on why they won, that sort of thing. We no longer do submitted news, so we wouldn't like copy and paste the press release anymore, but we would, a reporter would be able to rehash that information. Okay. Mason says, how do you maintain value with print, online readership, and social media sites such as Twitter? A lot of people, such as myself, don't necessarily want to pay for stories when it seems that news is everywhere now. Yeah, that's the difficult part, right, Mason? I think I mentioned that a little bit, is that everyone has some sort of news, whether it's like a blog or Twitter or Facebook. I think the thing that we say is that we're the ones who are fact checking, who are making sure that the right people are being spoken to get the story and record straight, depending on whatever the topic it is. And, we're putting in that time and effort to make sure that the story is fair and accurate and has context to your life. And so I think that, in itself is a service. You think of that as a service, right? And no other service is available for free. Think of it as going to a restaurant and paying for the food, or going to a store and paying for the clothing. It takes time. It takes a lot of training to get those stories written into the public. So, I think if you value Ames news that's fair and accurate, then, subscribe to the Ames Tribune. I think, like KCCI covers Ames pretty well, but I would say they probably don't give you the context that we would give you, their stories or the follow-up, right? I think they're pretty much more in and out than we are. Not to bash on KCCI, they do great coverage. So when we're giving that more exclusive, in-depth coverage, I think that's when paying for it becomes more valuable. All right, Charles. Applaud newspapers as Thomas Jefferson did. He said, the nation that expects to be ignorant and free expects what never was and never will be. That's great. That said, why not more letters to the editor and articles on political issues? We actually do have an opinion editor. His name is Lucas Grunmeyer. And with revenue decreases, we've had, I'm sure you guys have noticed, if you get the physical paper, it's much smaller than it used to be. Our opinion content is now only on Sundays. And so those letters are, however many, I don't even know how many he gets each week, are have to be condensed down to fit that one page. Articles on political issues. So if you heard me go over the three beats that our reporters have, politics, you wouldn't hear me say politics, right? Because that goes back to our Des Moines Register office, where we kind of see them as a bureau where we can get that legislative coverage. They have a robust legislative team, I think 3 reporters who are focused solely on the State House. And so we rely on them to give us our legislative coverage so that our 3 reporters in Ames can focus on local issues. But that being said, Teresa does cover local government, and there are political issues, when it comes to city elections, school board, that sort of thing. So we do have that sort of coverage in there. And if I'm done with your question and you have a follow-up, you can always jump in and whatever you guys want to do. Warren Madden says the content of the Ames Tribune and Des Moines Register are substantially identical. Why should I subscribe to both? Have you considered a joint subscription? The joint subscription is a great idea. I'm not sure how that would work because that's way over my head in terms of pay grade. I do know if you subscribe to the e-edition, I believe you get access to every Gannett paper that has an e-edition. So that would just be across the whole nation. I think there's only like 4 states that we're not in. So that's a big benefit. As far as the content of the Ames Tribune and Des Moines Register being identical, it goes back to, like I said, with the last question, that we're relying on Des Moines to do this coverage that we probably couldn't do. So you're getting that statewide coverage instead of that being, that hole being filled with, say, like International Wire or AP News. We've just kind of made that consideration because we think our Ames reporters do care about statewide coverage, or Ames readers, sorry, do care about statewide coverage. As far as subscribing to both, I think Ames is going to give you the more local content than anywhere else. Not every piece of Ames news makes it into the Register and vice versa. So, I don't want to tell you not to subscribe to anyone. I'd love to have subscriptions, but, I would just take everything that I said into consideration if you're looking at cutting expenses. Elizabeth says, how may we best contact senior staffers like you for a timely response to emails and or phone calls? My experience has not been positive in this area. I'm sorry about that. Like I said, we have that shared inbox, and we also have a phone that basically goes unanswered. You just have to leave a message for anyone to call you back, because we don't have, we do have a leased space, but everyone works remotely. And so sometimes there's just a delay in me getting to those voicemails or to those emails, but I can put in the chat when we're done my contact information so that you can email me directly instead of emailing like the shared inbox. I usually have that pulled up all day, and so it's just a little bit easier to get in touch with me. Mason says, what types of stories does the storyteller group tell? Is there a specific angle you're going for? These are stories so we pick a theme for the night. So we have our first show of 2023 tomorrow night, and it's on the topic of love because it's on Valentine's Day. So these stories are just based on the theme. They can be very loosely related to the theme, or they can be, strictly related to the theme. So for example, tomorrow night, we have a couple of traditional love stories about, people finding their partners and what it took to get there and the longevity of their relationships. We also have like a self-love, finding love for yourself after going through a difficult divorce type story. So it kind of runs the gamut. So they're based on the theme, and really it's up to the storyteller about what they want to share. They have a story around a certain topic, and then we just coach them to make it the best story possible. It's limited to 10 minutes. And the only thing we ask is that it's a true story about themselves.
So
it's
to keep going on that one, Kim, just as interest, where would people go to or find that?
Yeah, so our shows are at the Hoyt Sherman Place in Des Moines. We have a landing page called DesMoinesRegister.com/storytellers, and I will put that in the chat too when we're done. We have 3 shows this year. Normally we do 6, but we decided to go down to 3 with our big RAGBRAI 50th anniversary coming up, and also caucus season will be in full swing in the next couple months. So our reporters will be very busy. So we decided to do 3 this year. So we have a show, I think it's in June, and the topic is travel. And then a show in October, I think, And the topic is family. And so all those tickets are available on Ticketmaster.com. I think it's like $12 plus fees. But I will drop all that stuff in the chat too for you guys.
Kim,
So-
well, are those screened ahead of time, or do you receive so many and you have slots to fill, and so you pick and choose? How do you work
Yeah.
that whole dwindling down process?
Yeah, so we do have a lot of people who submit, which is great. We love that people, I always say this, I've been doing this we're on our 6th season now, and I've been doing it for 4 seasons. I'm always amazed that we can like get that many people who are brave enough to tell their story on stage. But yeah, we get lots of submissions. And so we look at the submissions and we pick based on, we don't want to have like 3 of the same story, right? Or very similar stories. So we pick based on what they submit for their story. We also pick based on diversity. So we want to have our tellers reflect our community. So we're not just picking the same, race or age or, other backgrounds, religious backgrounds, veterans, people with disabilities, that sort of thing. So we take a look at a lot of factors before we pick our lineup. And then every once in a while, we'll have also like our sources be storytellers. So for example, last year, our last show was on generosity. And one of our Des Moines reporters, Francesca Block, had interviewed a man in Iowa City who had recently been paralyzed in a bike accident. And she wrote a story about him, but then he also became one of our storytellers about that story and how, the generosity of people as he was recovering and becoming used to this new life in a wheelchair. So lots of types. Any other questions on the storytellers? Okay. Kent says, what does it mean or take to be an editor? Being the editor means that I'm here to organize our reporters to make sure that we're covering, the biggest news of the day, that we are understanding what the community is wanting to see in the pages of the Tribune, talking through deadlines, making sure, we have the week filled, we have at least one local story on the page every day. But it's also, the editing process, right, of the words and the context of the story. Does the story answer the question that we're trying to answer? Does it have the proper sources? Do we need to talk to more people to really understand what the issue is? There's grammar and punctuation, the basic tenets of editing that way too. And then it's also, having conversations like this with community members, whether that's through email or on this sort of meeting, making presentations and just connecting with the community. And I will say, I'm based in Des Moines, but it's been really nice to head back to Ames as much as I've been able to, because I did go to Iowa State. And so it's really fun to just kind of see the differences that Ames is going through since I left in 2010. Just driving down like University and Duff and Lincoln Way, just everything looks so different. So it's just exciting to be back. But any other questions on what it means to be an editor? I don't know if does that cover it? Cool. Luis, has the printed media ever considered a logo that represents fact-checked, veracity-checked content and identify those that subscribe to that concept? So our parent company, Gannett, owns USA Today, and they do a fact-checking series. So that's basically what they have, reporters who are devoted just to fact-checking. And so, they'll find like a theory floating around the internet, and then they'll try to say whether it's true, whether it's wrong, whether it's slightly true, slightly wrong. And so they're devoted to that. And I think we do carry those at least on our website. But I would say, anything that appears in the Ames Tribune, we say that we are fact checking as we report these stories, right? So I think you can have that confidence that the stories that appear on our pages are fact checked.
Well, unfortunately, it may not be applicable to where it's really needed, and that is on the internet.
Yeah, yes, that's true. Yeah, I think, I do think that there is some, I want to say like news consumption. There isn't like a lot of that is taught about news consumption, I think, in school. And so I think it's hard for people to scrutinize between links, right? If you're looking at a link that's like on the Ames Tribune website, and if you're looking at a link that's on, say, this is a blog that I don't even know if it exists, but like the Ames community and people, just something that's not from an official news source, how do you just decide as a consumer which one I trust and which one is accurate, right? And I think there's just a lot of misinformation about what the news does, that I think, schools and other community members could use, some proper education on. But yeah, I think you're right, Louis, that sometimes people just don't know, and that's unfortunate. It would be nice to have a logo like that. Oh, John did confirm that you can get the all Gannett papers across the country with your online subscription. Thomas says, with fewer reporters, are more news stories taken off the AP wire? What percentage of news is original from the reporters versus AP? We really don't use a lot of AP, at least Iowa news. I mean, we will every once in a while when they have big ones, but I don't know the percentage. It's pretty low. Anything that if a reporter would have used anything from the Associated Press, we always have a little tagline at the bottom that says the Associated Press contributed to this article. So the AP may have, gotten a source that we couldn't get to before publication deadline. So they'll, our reporters can use that, or they'll have, maybe the AP has vetted something that our reporter wasn't able to get to, and so they would use that. So it always says it at the bottom. Or if we're using just a straight AP story, it'll say the byline by the AP. And Anne says, there have been many national articles about Gannett's drastically cutting local reporters. Ames reporters no longer always attend important local meetings. What can be done? Yeah, this is hard, right? We're down to 3 reporters and we used to have lots more. I will say that some, we do hope to be attending as many meetings as possible. If you're talking about like city council and school boards, it may be that they're attending virtually instead of in person, because we're all just kind of have that option now. But like I said, we have to pick and choose what we cover. And sometimes there's meetings that may not be a wealth of information for them. And sometimes that time that they would be sitting in a meeting may be better spent talking to sources or working on other stories, and then they can catch up to those virtual meetings later. So I would say just because they're not there doesn't mean they aren't paying attention. With so many things to balance, sometimes you have to pick and choose. Like, for example, when I covered the western suburbs in Des Moines, that was like 6 cities that I was covering, and they all met on Mondays. So there, I had to pick based on the agenda or what was happening that day, like what meeting that I went to physically. And then the rest of the week was kind of spent catching up with what I may have missed. What is the biggest story I've ever covered from, oh, sorry, Carol, was someone raising their hand? No, okay. Kent says, what is the biggest story I've ever covered? Let's see. I've done 2 caucus cycles, so those are always big stories. I covered Elizabeth Warren this last time, and so she was a wealth of big stories. I've had my share of local scandals, and in Waukee School District, there was a chief operating officer who was using the school district equipment at his personal home. And I uncovered that story, and it led to some indictments and charges and his firing. So that's probably one of the biggest stories that I've covered. Yeah, you're making me like go back into the cobwebs of my brain, you know? But yeah, it's a fun job. I mean, reporting is such a fun thing because you just get to talk to people, you get to meet people you may not have otherwise met. Every day is completely different. You know, the news kind of drives what your day is. So you may be writing about business one day or about, you know, politicians the next day. And it's just a very exciting industry. And it's something that I've loved since I went to Iowa State and worked at the Daily. Would your local reporters have time for a weekly meeting at a coffee shop in Ames to listen to Ames locals about it? What is of interest going on in Ames? Could be a good way to get local, interesting, important stories. I think that is an interesting concept. You know, I don't know if weekly is the best, you know, time slot, but I think that is something that they'd probably be interested in. If you want to send me an email with maybe, you know, a pitch for the first meeting, if they want to fit it in their calendars, I think they would be open to that. All three of our Ames reporters are local and live in Ames. Jay Johnson says, from your student days at Iowa State, did you write for the Daily? Who is your favorite faculty member in class? How did Barbara Mack, if she did, impact your personal and professional growth as you reflect on your Iowa State and professional journey? I did write for the Daily. I loved Barbara. I mean, she was amazing. She made us think in different ways, I think, than other faculty did. She was always challenging your mind, and anything that you wrote, she was challenging and making sure that you could back it up 100%. I think the lessons that she taught, me and any journalism student at Iowa State are just invaluable. And I think, obviously we're missing her a lot, and the entire university is. I think like a lot of people in my classes have gone on to law school and law degrees, I think in part because of Barbara, protecting the sanctity of the First Amendment and the news industry is obviously invaluable. And so to have people under her influence go into that field is just really inspiring. Let's see, my favorite faculty member. Well, that's hard to say. I mean, Barbara obviously was great. I'm not sure if you guys know Bulla. He was wonderful. Kim Smith, I still am in contact with because he teaches at Grandview. So I go speak to his classes in Des Moines. And then obviously, Mark Witherspoon at the Daily, his advisorship, I think led a lot of people really far into their careers in this business. So it was great. I loved Iowa State. I loved the Daily. Funny story, Barbara Mack actually scared me into writing for the Daily because I started in journalism 101, and she was like, if you want to get a job outside of school, you're going to have to get some real world experience. And the only way you can do that is at the Daily. And I was like, all right, I guess I'll join. And then, I ended up loving it. So it's all thanks to her. Carol says, what is the time cutoff to get a news item into the paper the next day? We do have very early deadlines, unfortunately. Our print product is due to the press at 2:30 every day. So that is a big challenge for us, obviously. We can't report on city council meetings or school board meetings and get them in the paper the next day. Part of the reason it's so early is because our press in Des Moines prints not only the Gannett papers in this region, but also other papers across the state, and even like the Kansas City Star. That's a revenue stream for us. So every paper has its set deadline to go to the press for printing. And that's just, so they can keep on track with everything that they have to print. Kent asks, how do you decide to divide your time between the two communities And how do you determine the importance of a story? Well, I speak to my Ames reporters every single day, and I speak to my Des Moines reporters every single day too. So, it's a matter of just dividing time throughout the day between both. Sometimes there's overlap where, say, an Ames reporter has an interesting topic that we could probably replicate in Des Moines. Then, they can kind of work together on those sorts of stories, like where your ARPA money is being spent. Des Moines just did a big piece on that. And so each of the reporters contacted each of the cities and did a story on that. So there's a little bit of overlap there. And how do we determine the importance of a story? It just depends on, there's a lot of factors. So impact to taxpayers, any sort of high dollar, thing being spent by community or by cities or school boards, things that generate conversation, topics related to national importance. There was just a story on the Turkish students at Iowa State fundraising for the earthquake. So, that's obviously an important topic right now because Turkey is so devastated. So there's a lot of different things that you kind of think about as you're thinking through a story and whether we should chase it. And he also wants to know the impact of the Democratic Party and the caucus process in Iowa. Yeah, I think it's a huge loss, right? I think it remains to be seen what's going to happen. I think, the Iowa Dems are trying to fight for some sort of relevance in the nominating process, but that's still to be determined. I do think it's a big loss to our state, right? Think of how many presidential candidates have come to Iowa State alone. So I do think that's a big impact to our local communities, our economies. Fortunately, we have the Republican caucus still, and so we will still see a lot of candidates and supporters coming into the state. And we already are there. Carrie Lake was in Iowa. Nikki Haley was in Iowa or is coming soon. I think it's this week. So at least we have one half of it, but it still kind of remains to be seen what's going to happen with the rest of it. Hagen says, do you know how many in Ames subscribe to a paid news service? What market share do you have? Who is your greatest competitor? I don't know how many subscribe off the top of my head. Our greatest competitor is probably KCCI because they're, they have our coverage in the community. But I think, some of our coverage is unmatched. Charles Nicker says, similar to Liz's comment, a local congregation has brought in national speakers for 40 years on major ethical issues. In 2022, our program went national, 700 registrants from 43 states. Topic was on climate. Couldn't get Ames Tribune to cover it. Our September 23 program will be another significant issue. How to get to do interview of speaker. Yeah, I think if you just send me the information on what it is you're wanting, what it is the event is, and who maybe is speaking, I think we can get that covered. I'm not sure about the 2022 one, if that was when I was still here.
Right. No, well, that was climate. No, as I said, we don't have the publicity out yet. We're just shaping up the final sessions, but he will speak at the university too on Friday night.
Okay, great.
He's very, very well known. It'll be a dynamite topic. So again, so I think the point is, and he will be here in person. Some of these programs we had to do Zoom, so we didn't have speakers in town, but we'll have some sessions locally, which I think people would be interested in. So it just seems to be difficult to get coverage.
Yeah, I know, and I understand that, and I sympathize with that. I think it goes back to the difficulties we have with staff, and I don't want to say that everything is difficult because we just have to pick and choose what we're doing. But I think announcing things like that is not a very heavy lift and can be done quite easily by reporters. And so we can happily fit those things in.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Awesome. That was my last question that's in here. So does anyone else have anything else they want to ask or talk about?
I could ask another one on the sports scene. Again, I'm a state biased. It seems like sometimes your Iowa City Press Citizen West, so much more sports coverage of Iowa athletics, University of Iowa athletics.
Yeah, I've heard that before. And, I would say that we have the same number of reporters covering Iowa State as we do Iowa. I think, especially now, there's a lot of stories coming out of Iowa that maybe have a little bit of statewide interest, like the racial profiling lawsuit that they just settled among the sports team, and the issues with I'm blanking on the Coach Ferentz's son. And sometimes, simply put, some reporters are a little bit more productive, right? So they can write more stories in a week than maybe another reporter can. And so it looks like, possibly their coverage is more, but it comes down to the individual reporters, what they see as a story and how they can get it fit into their week. And we do have Hawk Central for Iowa, but we don't have a Cyclones one. So yes, you might be right there.
Why don't we have a Cyclone Center?
That's a good question. I don't really know the answer to that. I would think probably just demand. They probably see the Iowa stories getting a lot more attention than the Cyclone stories do. And I'm not sure if that's ever been tried before, to be honest.
Well, yeah, I know WHO impacts gets the Iowa, and we get KXNO for Iowa State, so that kind of gives you an indication.
Yeah.
But
Cyclone Fanatic, I think, is someone else.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's independent.
Yeah.
Yep. Do we have anything else for Kim? Wonderful questions. I appreciate the interest. And Kim, you've done a phenomenal job. I appreciate you sharing.
Yeah, I'm happy to share.
And before I get too far along, if you're in Ames on a Monday, and it's the first, third, or fifth Monday, please stop by and be a guest of one of our meetings. We'd appreciate that opportunity.
Yeah, I would love to.
There's one more question in the chat.
Oh,
is there any chance that an arts culture section will come back to print, or would that be something that could be done digitally? Probably not an entire section in print. We do try to cover arts and in the community as much as possible. I will say one of our reporters has been out for the past several months, but she is coming back and will be hopefully picking up that coverage a little bit more.
Well, I will unabashedly promote tonight is My Fair Lady at CYP.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. And to be fair-minded, there's also a women's basketball game. So
yes, there is.
Yep. So we got both.
That's gonna be a busy parking lot.
If you only knew.
Kim, can you drop the contact information?
Yes.
And the link to the storytellers that you had mentioned in the chat, please? Thank you.
As she shares this, I'll start to close, as I usually do, with a couple of quotes. I love this one. Unfortunately, it shows its age. I read about 8 newspapers a day. When I'm in a town with only one newspaper, I read it 8 times. Will Rogers. Of more significance, he who is without a newspaper is cut off from his species. P.T. Barnum. And lastly, from Robert Kennedy, no one needs to tell me about the importance of the free press in a democratic society or about the essential role a newspaper can play in its community. And I hope, Kim, you can see what an important role we hope that the Tribune will continue to play in Ames. So thank you again for your time.
Yes, and please feel free to reach out via my email address. Let me put in my office phone line too. we're always, open to hearing from our community, any questions or comments or concerns or story ideas. Please feel free to reach out and I will be happy to answer your questions as I can. Thank you so much for having me.
Our pleasure. Well, as we conclude the meeting, as always, if you would prepare folks, we'll stand for and present the 408 test. Of the things I think, say, and do, is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it build goodwill and better friendships? Will it be beneficial to all concerned? Meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.